possible.
Great.
All right, we're live. Here we go. What's up, guys? John Sintes, Cass Kreitlow, Cutternation Podcast 66. You guys know it. The streak is alive. We're still going. We're a little short on time today, so we want to jump into it. Cass, would you like to introduce Amanda?
Yes. This is Amanda Allen. I know Amanda because of the gym that she runs. And I know that Amanda played some softball. So her and her husband, Jeremy, run a gym in, what's the neighborhood specifically? I'm terrible with this stuff.
It's in Mission Gorge, like Allied Gardens area.
Yeah, called Outlier CrossFit, and absolutely one of the best communities I've ever seen. And so I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'll get all jacked up. So Amanda, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit professionally? I know that you're not just a softball lady. You've worn a ton of hats, and you've already alluded to that. So give us your LinkedIn, and then we can kind of start telling some stories.
So I played softball and softball only for 20 years. I don't know. I played from age 6 to graduating college, and I never played any other sports. Like a lot of kids played a lot of other sports, and I didn't. So cut to after college and playing, where we did win. Yeah, UCLA. I'm wearing my hat today. Got a rep.
What years was it?
It was 2003, 2004. We won the national championship. So I got to go out senior year on a high note. That was pretty awesome. And then after that, I wanted to do like every other sport because I never played any other sports. So I went to law school again at UCLA. I wanted to just stay there for the rest of my life, but they keep charging you for tuition and things. So I finished school, but while I was in law school, I joined the triathlon team, which was a club team. It's now an NCAA team, but at the time it was a club team, which was pretty unheard of in law school. But I wanted to do more sports because I hadn't had a chance. And then, after law school was also a little bit sort of like fish out of water when it's all you've ever known. And so I was working in a law firm, cutting my chops, spending really long hours, gaining too much weight, missing the athlete life. And that's when I found CrossFit, which is, all about a variety of movement, functional fitness across broad time and modal domains. And we fell in love with it. So that's kind of how we got to owning a CrossFit gym. My husband quit his engineering firm and runs that full time. I run my law firm. I have a couple partners now. We do business and real estate law. And I also own a co-working space. So I couldn't find like really great space to have like a small solo practice. So I started my own co-working space that's for lawyers only. Which services things like that lawyers need, like confidentiality and service of process, all sorts of lawyer stuff. So I'm all about sort of making your own path, if you will.
Sounds like you've never worked a day in your life.
No. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Except for So, and then I have a daughter, so she's 7, and we missed softball season this year, so it's kind of a bummer. But
devastating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Devastating.
So I always think it's really interesting to give kids perspective. We're starting to get some more connections in the softball world. We had Jason Yulee, my friend, on last week or so, and who knows who's watching. So can you tell us a little bit more about softball you're Southern California this whole time, right? Or I totally forget where you're from. I'm so bad with that stuff.
Yeah, I'm from San Diego. I played in San Diego until I was 13. And then I went to play in like North Orange County for one of the club teams that San Diego didn't have as competitive of club teams when I was in like the late 90s, mid 90s, as they do now. At least that's my understanding. I'm not real tied into the club network down here right now. But at that time, they didn't have a lot of great, highly competitive club teams. So I went and played in Orange County, which is kind of a funny story if you want me to tell it.
Yeah, please.
So I was 13. I was playing on like a 14 under team down here, but my dad was in the process of trying to build a better club, San Diego club circuit. He started the Breakers, which are still around apparently. And he was coaching a 16 and under team. So when I wasn't with my team, I'd go play with his team. And we were playing this like top team in the country. They were 16 and under, but they were all 14. They could have all played 14 and under. And the idea was to keep this group together forever. And so we were playing them and things were getting kind of ugly. They had the coach was this big Italian guy named Matt. And I kept getting on and I kept stealing second base. And he gets out of his chair and he goes, "Hey, nobody steals second base on me." And so I get on base again and I steal second again. And at this time, like things started getting heated. I don't know why the game took such a turn, but when I slid in a second and stole it the second time, their shortstop like caught the ball after I hit the base and just smacked me in the head. So we kind of got into it, and she was like 5'10", like a 14-year-old, 5'10", like Amazon giant. And so then I'm like small and scrappy. That's like my life story. This like I'm like think I'm bigger than I am. So I'm like going at it with this girl at second base, and the shortstop gets up to bat. We hit her right in the back. We just throw the first pitch right between her shoulder blades. My dad's coaching third. This guy is like, he's like asking for who my parents are. He's like, "I want to talk to her parents." Like he's like during the game, like trying to recruit me to his team. And so my dad goes, "Her mom's over there. Go talk to her mom." And so somehow, or somebody said her mom's over there. So he goes over and says like, "Hey, I want to talk to that kid." And they go, "Oh, you're talking to his dad at third base." And he goes, "Oh crap." Because they'd been fighting the whole game. So that was kind of what happened. I got recruited to that team out of that game. My dad and Matt became like best friends, and he was a tremendous mentor. And I ended up in Orange County and stayed there through my high school career, which was pretty cool. But the parity in softball has grown tremendously across the whole country, let alone Southern California. California is still a hotbed, but now there's just a lot more competition throughout the country, which is great. It used to just be SoCal that dominated, and Arizona and UCLA would play in the World Series every year, and that's changed. So it's good for the sport.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just for Minnesota, I mean, maybe I'm the one that cares a little bit more about hearing the intricacies of that, but I think it's important for people to understand the history and the perspective from how the game has existed in San Diego and the whole entire county. Because there's so much here, especially now, right? And it's easy for us to forget even like 10, 15 years ago how much it wasn't like this, and how player development and like what the expectation is of kids has changed drastically. So yeah. I know that you like have just a motor that never stops. And so I know you keep wanting I want to get a little bit more deep into like you playing. What do you remember playing as a kid? Right? Like when did you know that like I'm going to go to UCLA? Like I know we have quite a few kids that are like UCLA is the coolest thing in the world, right? So I think so. Yeah. So when did that start? When did you believe that you could do it and then go get it?
I honestly never thought UCLA was in my grasp, to be quite honest, because I was really good. I was all state. I was CIF. I was a freshman on varsity in high school. I did all the things, but UCLA, there were 5 Olympians on my team. Like UCLA is not a school that you just like try to go to. Like they have to come find you. So I actually had, it was different then too, because you waited till like your senior year to go take trips and then pick. And now, well, they've changed it a little, right? So like the recruiting, people are committing at like 12, something like that.
Do you remember that first girl, that like 8th grader, that like the first really young girl?
Yeah.
The pitcher? That was Jason's girl. My friend
really?
Jason. Yeah. And that's how
she
he like
committed?
Yeah, and it was just like
Yeah.
he just happened to have a connection. It wasn't something that he was like, he's like, people got me gave me such a bad rap, but he's like, I didn't do anything. I was just her coach, and she happened to, be seen at a really young age. And
did she decommit or did she go?
I don't remember the whole entire story. I just know that she committed at 12 or 13 or whatever. I'm pretty sure it was 12.
Yeah. Yeah. So they've rolled that back now in terms of what coaaches are allowed to do. And I think that's the thing. Especially for girls softball. I'm not exactly sure about baseball, but for girls, we physically can mature a little younger. Like we can, like in those teenage years, like you do hit a peak that's probably younger than baseball. Like when a guy physically becomes like 100% of all they're going to be, sort of thing.
It's like gymnastics and swimming where just like young women dominate the sport.
Right. But like mentally and emotionally, they're still kids. And so they don't know who they are, who they're going to be, where they want to be. And it's hard enough making that decision at, junior and senior year. I couldn't imagine my 12 or 13-year-old self knowing where I wanted to play college. I mean, that's just crazy to me. But what happened to me is that I had these really high grades. And so I had this really narrow focus of where I wanted to play. So I took a trip to Boston College. I was looking at Virginia, some Brown, some non-athletic scholarship schools. And I was trying to find where I could play and like get a great education. And then UCLA, actually, Natasha Wally, who's like the best player to ever play. She has multi-Honda award winning. She was the shortstop on my club team, and she was a year ahead of me. So she was already going to UCLA, and I played left field. And the softball coaches were looking for speed. They were looking just for somebody to come in and steal bases. And so they talked to her dad. They went around my coach, my club coach. They talked to her dad and said, what kind of person is she? And they asked, like, what was my attitude like? What was I like in the dugout? Am I like a good teammate? And so UCLA saw me in warm up, and they saw me steal bases, and they recruited me literally to just to come and steal bases. And they're like, if you're ever going to get a starting position, you may or may not. You may see little to no playing time, but you can be a part of something bigger and greater. And that was a really hard decision, because I could go somewhere and be the starting center fielder and lead off and have this like career with a lot of great stats. But I realized after my trip to Boston, where it was snowing and they parked on the softball team for the hockey game, that I probably wasn't cut out for like East Coast softball life. And I wanted to be closer to family. So when I went to UCLA on my recruiting trip, all the players, they get $20 or they get money to like have dinner with the recruits on the recruiting weekends. And one of the players, freshmen, lost her money, and a bunch of the seniors pretended that they found it, because she was like really upset. And she's like, I lost my recruiting money and all this stuff. They pretended that they found it. And I could tell that they were pretending they found it just to help her. And it was kind of, that sounds like a silly moment. I also toured the best great athletic facilities and their championship program and all of that. But like the human aspect, that's why I really chose UCLA, was the culture and the way they took care of each other. And I made a decision that was to not necessarily get to play in every game. And I wouldn't take it back. But I actually didn't tell anybody. I went back to my club coach. This was my last year, was a different club coach. And he was actually, everybody who was coming to recruit me, he was actually sending them to this other person who he had coached since they were like 12. And I hadn't played for him that long. And so Stanford had one scholarship and they asked for me, and he pushed and prodded and got this other girl to go there instead. So I was pretty devastated, because I could have played, and I would have got to play at Stanford. Like they had one scholarship that year. but I think it all works out. And if I could just tell young athletes, like, you got to just keep playing the game and love the game, and it will work out and you will land where you're supposed to be.
So what was it like as a freshman at UCLA?
Am I allowed to cuss? It was,
Yes.
Yeah.
it was real fucking hard. It was real fucking hard. I mean, your body has never trained the way that you train in fall. Like, fall is the gauntlet. Like, season is where you get to have fun, and fall is just a complete gauntlet of like physical training, competition. Every spot on the field is up for grabs. And it's just really high intensity in the fall. Like, I would say like the scrimmages are harder than playing in the spring, just because you're also playing the number one pitcher in the country's on your team, you know, like that's who you're hitting against. So it's just really brutal. But it's also really fun. Like, I mean, the fall is fun because we're not on the road as much. So, and you get to know your teammates, and the camaraderie is unbelievable. They're still my like very best friends in the world. But freshman year is brutal. I remember, so UCLA is built with like the dorms on one side and then all the athletic facilities in the middle, and then the school and classes on the other side. So no matter where you go, you have to walk uphill. And I just remember being so sore on the way back to our dorms. We just like sat on the stairs, like me and my 4 other freshmen, we just like sat on the stairs for like a half hour looking up like, okay, we can make it to the top, guys. Like, the soreness was so real because I'd never done, you know, power cleans and so much explosive training, box jump, just everything that I hadn't done in high school. And I wish I had, because I was really small. And I sometimes wonder if I had trained how I train now, if I would have just had a better shot, because I was not big enough.
Yeah, preach. I'm with you on that one. I was so underdeveloped. I was like 6'4", 170, and just like didn't have a clue at like what strength was. And then my freshman, I went to Pensacola Junior College, which is in the Panhandle. It's the number one Panhandle junior college in the country. And I mean, just such a wake up call. Like, as soon as you're telling me about that, I'm going like, remember like struggling to get my legs in my SUV and being like, I don't know how I'm getting in my car right now. Like, this is terrible.
And I remember you'd go through practice and like you would just somehow shut it off and like get hurt, but you just keep going. And then after practice, we would all just like lay around with ice packs all over our bodies.
Yeah. That was your bonding. Everybody in misery.
Yeah.
Going like, what was that?
Yeah. What just happened?
See, this is funny because I wrestled. And there was no baseball practice that could ever compete with a wrestling practice. I'm sure. And then people would be like, oh, but I was in football. I'm like, yeah, I know. I was too. Like, wrestling is a different thing. That's why CrossFit, I'm like, oh yeah, I am definitely psycho enough to do this. But
yeah, you have to have like a tiny screw loose, you know? Not
to take away from that, but I want to throw out something, because I've been thinking about this with all of like just everything being canceled and, putting things into perspective between like a D3, D1, the whole thing. When you sit and talk about the way that you've had to multitask, and this is a tangent, and I want to come back right to freshman year and get back to that. But the idea that like, I don't know that it's better to have more time as a student athlete. So when you think D3 and you think it's better for the student athlete, like the amount of time kind of makes it harder to be a great student athlete, where Division I forces you into that. And I will also say the things that you shared with your teammates, I think is less common at the D2 and D3 levels that have more restrictions on how much time that they can be training. Because let's be honest, what happens that you cut off the fat, right? You trim off the fat when you do that. So if you really want to be a student athlete, and I know you're going to be about this because you did it in law school, for crying out loud, right? But that's what made me think about it, is like, you did that to make yourself better, to give yourself an advantage, not to like beat yourself down, even though it can feel like that at times. So anyway, I think we can maybe get back to that whatever. But because I want to keep on going back, I want to know about like your coach and the culture and the people. And I want to get to Ken Ravizza, oh my goodness.
Ken.
Yeah, look at that. Just wherever you want to go.
Well, so playing for Sue Enquist was probably like the greatest gift of my life. I mean, I'm 38 and I imagine even in my old age, not looking back and saying how lucky I was to play for her. So she was mentored by Coach Wooden. We got to spend a lot of time with Coach Wooden. And, she is ferociously protective of the bubble. We call it the bubble at UCLA, which is just like that whatever happens in there, we are there for each other, and we will, you will be torn down, but you will also be built back up. And she's committed to every person leaving. There's no big pro league to go to, right? So she needs us to finish in 4 years with some life skills, some ability to like succeed in the world and be good humans. And that woman will chew her arm off to win. So most of the people on our team had that very similar mentality. So you put that in with 18 women on a roster, and it could be a recipe for disaster. So it was a work of a team that I think kept our teams together every year. Like everybody definitely played their roles. Like we had Gina Vecchione, who was one of the best softball players to ever play the game. She's in all the Hall of Fames. She's the one who really recruited me, and she was our outfield coach. And she was love all the time. Like you got to first base and she would like slam you on the back. Like, yeah, you walked, like whatever it was. She was just like all love all the time. And so there was a variety of coaches. Kelly Inouye Perez, she's the coach now. She was the assistant when I was there, and she was more like in the weeds with all the players. Like, what was their school like? Are you going to pass your classes? Like, how are we going to do this? You got to get fit. Like, she was in the weeds. But Sue was this big, just force. And, you had to show up every day and give it, even if you were sick or whatever happened, like the John Wooden, give 100% of whatever you got every single day played out. And so even if you're at 60%, give 100% of that 60%, right? And that is literally how we approached every single day and every single practice. And, it wasn't all roses all the time. She had high expectations. We were in Fresno and we won 2-1 against Cal Poly. Like, this is a day I'll never forget. My teammates still talk about this. But we played really shitty. Like, we just didn't play well, and we won. And she thought we didn't deserve it, right? She was like, you don't deserve to win when you play so shitty. Like, and it was a disrespect for the game. That was her thing, was like, yes, there are shirts in the other dugout, but there's a game to be played, and you play it at a certain level and in a certain way all the time, because the game doesn't care, right? So we ran for I don't know how long after that game. I don't know if they would be allowed to let you run that much now with the NCAA rules and all that stuff. But yeah, so that was what it was like to play for Sue. She's still highly involved in my life. She was on, God, what's that podcast? It's mastering the game. It's really popular podcast. She was just on it. And I recommend it. If you type master podcast, Sue Enquist, she pops up. But she goes over her philosophy there and the impact of Coach Wooden on her coaching. But so she brought in Ken Ravizza because she was obsessed with finding the way to be better than everybody. Every tiny nuance. she would show up with like, hey, we've got this new hitting tool. This is a bat that's like weighted at like 2 inches so that when you swing, you're going to feel like your hands go to the perfect position. Like she came up with all these crazy things. We were always trying to get that tiny bit better. But Ken Revisa was here, right? As the sports psychologist, mental coach, mental training coach. And so she wanted us to get ahead there. But he was the most wonderful person because she was so hard. And then he was so like really like nitty gritty, thoughtful, and had this ability to make you think that you could accomplish more than you thought you could. So his main focus, and this is baseball, right? Baseball, softball, is like, how do you deal with failure? Failure to recovery was like everything he ever talked about, like building that resilience muscle, because baseball is all failure. I mean, like if you get a hit 1 out of 3 times, you're like an All-American, right? So that means 2 out of 3 times you failed. Even like pitch by pitch, right? You're up to bat and you swing at like a ball in the dirt or one over your head. Like, how do you mentally fail and then like step out of the box, and how do you recover? So we went deep with Ken Revisa, and he personally helped me because, I didn't get to play in the fields a lot. And I struggled with that, especially like my junior year, because I was like, okay, my time is running out. And I could see the amazing players on my team. And I was like, I'm never going to get to play. But what he really taught me was to appreciate the game beyond like just being in the game on the field, and how to deal with that like failure recovery, which was very heightened for me, because when you're not on, you don't get more swings when you're at the bottom of the list of people who need swings, right? So I didn't get a lot of cuts in practice. I didn't get a lot of game time. So when I was in there, I had to like make the most of it. And when I failed, it felt bigger than it was. It felt enormous. Like my failure felt enormous because I'm only going to get a small amount of chances. And if I don't take advantage of them, then like I just was really, really hard on myself. So he really helped me to focus on like the ability to be in the moment, to do your very best, and then let it go. Like he even had little toilets he used to put, these little tiny toilets. Have you seen them?
Yeah.
Or he would be like, you need to flush that, whatever happened. And that's like still helpful in life, right? I mean, like you got to let it go.
Yeah. So. I haven't read his books. So his book is Heads Up Baseball, and then Heads Up Baseball 2 by Ken Revisa. Revisa. You seem to know more than I do. So Revisa, I'll go with that. But I saw him at the coaches convention, and I'll always remember we were all sitting there, and somebody walked in the door, and like half the room goes and looks at the door. He's like, you guys, why did that happen? Like, you're not in control of your thoughts enough to just be like, oh, that's a person walking through the door, but I'm paying attention to something else here. I don't need to look at that person. The other thing was, and the college that I went to uses this still, when like on the mound, if an error happens behind you, are you so shitty that you can't recover from one little error? Like, or a bad call from the umpire.
Right.
Like, you're so bad that they can't miss a call every now and then for you. Yeah. Like, that's how bad you are? Really? Yeah. Like, you don't think you're that good. And it's like, no, you actually do. So you can get the hell over that because it's not that big of a deal.
Yes.
And so that was really funny. There was another thing that he had said, but I can't imagine getting to hear all of his stories and metaphors just constantly.
Yeah, and like getting to work with him on a one-on-one basis, because we all have our neuroses. So he would just, he was, like you said, with everybody turning their head, he could just zero in a way that was like very uncomfortable and point out like where you needed to flip the switch. So
yeah, it's been, it continues to be something that we can't ignore on our side of things, because we have kids coming in all different shapes and forms, whether mentally, emotionally, like it's all over the map. And so as coaches, especially in 2020, we have to wear so many hats, and like psychology is so high in that.
So here's a thing that I didn't want to leave this podcast without saying. For girls, they say that the confidence will peak at 9 years old. For girls, it's so young, and it's you can go into why that is, right? But sports have the ability to shift that. What's hard about softball is it's a sport of failure. So if kids don't experience girls experience some sort of positive impact on their lives early in softball, they will quit. And so they're going to miss out on the long-term aspect. And so it is so important because to young girls to have positive self-talk, positive affirmations. That doesn't mean that you don't correct or give feedback, because learning feedback is the key to all of life, right? Feedback is a gift. That doesn't mean you have to like it, but you need to hear it. And so that doesn't mean you can't teach critical feedback, but we need young girls to hear positive things about themselves, about who they are, about their teammates. Even hearing somebody else get a positive feedback, they'll internalize that as well. And boys don't have that same, not that there's not boys with some negative self-talk, but in general, girls need to be nicer. They need to be friendlier. They need to smile more. I just coached my daughter last year. I coached my daughter's little t-ball team. It's not quite t-ball and softball. It's like T and then the coach pitches. And this little girl, one of the best little players on our team, she had great hand-eye coordination, super serious face. And so she's up to bat and she's super serious. And I can hear her dad yelling, "Smile, honey, smile." And I'm like, she's so good and she's hitting the ball. And by telling her to smile, you're telling her she's not doing it right. Like, she doesn't need to smile. You can ask her if she's having fun. If she tells you no, have a conversation about that. But it just all I did that entire season, my whole goal was to make these girls have fun and think that softball is a fun place to be and a great sport. And even as an adult, I hear people in CrossFit, Cass, you can attest to this, with the worst self-talk. And so we'll be getting ready to start a workout and they'll just be like, "I'm screwed. I can't do this. This is going to be so bad. I'm too sore. I'm terrible. I'm never going to be able to lift this much weight." The amount of negative self-talk is just out of control. But I think in the game of softball, we have such an opportunity to change that for young girls. And it's super, super important because what we see is in that 12 to 13-year-old range is that they'll just drop off because they don't have the skill set, the emotional toolkit to make it through those really hard times.
I really think it's I'm not to take away anything from what you said. I could agree with everything that you said. I feel in general, the experiences that I'm having is just emotional intelligence in general is not something that people typically are representing in every shape, every part of their life, right? Maybe they're good at home, but maybe they don't express it professionally.
Yeah.
And so I just see these things as inconsistencies from adults to children in general. We have to do a better job of understanding where they're at. And this is a completely different world. The world that we live in does not create perspective 50 years ago, right? So as a kid, if you know that Vietnam is happening, it's kind of easy to go "Oh, wow. My parents are doing whatever they can to make this happen." Where now it's everything is so fluffy that it's not so obvious what's going on. I don't think for anybody. So I think this is challenging in general for us to be there for one another in a world that doesn't make us be there for one another. Right. And so what I have felt so much since really moving to San Diego, between John at Cutternation and you guys, is just that's how things grow. Things grow out of this ability to build each other up. I actually had a conversation with Will. Whatever is going to happen right now is going to happen because I'm just going to go into it. So Will and I had a conversation about what we argue about. And Will said, he goes, we're arguing about all of the things that are most important to us. That's what people argue about. And I go, I couldn't disagree more. I think that we only argue about the few things that we don't actually care that much about, but disagree about, right? Because most of the things are like, hey, do you think hate speech is a good idea? No. Like, nobody's ever going to agree on that. But then, like, how you then, like, you know, like legislation in Canada, like outlawing hate speech, that's a different conversation than saying, like, I don't know why I just took it there, but anyway, like,
where are we going?
Oh my gosh. I don't want to keep going on that. Save me, Amanda. Will, we're talking about that. And I'm just in a world where as kids come into our facility, right? I know that they're going to be I'm going to have a kid that has a ton of anxiety. I'm going to have a kid that is overly confident and needs to be knocked down a peg and understand what reality is. Right. And I'm going to we have
without
softball
crushing
players.
That confidence though, without crushing that confidence.
Right. And building that up. And that's the thing is like, so I'll get to the point. My experience has been this. It's really, really hard in sports or in general to know enough about whatever it is you're teaching, right? So as the coach, as the teacher, as the parent, it's so hard to be as expert as you possibly can to know where you should and should not assert yourself. So to me, I think it's important to like err on the side of being kind, err on the side of like, hey, maybe this kid is actually trying as hard as they possibly can right now. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's start the conversation with there. And if they want to be a child and freak out, then we can be the adult and try to save them and put them in their place. But I just see too often that we do not give them the benefit of the doubt and we put them on the defensive. We should be the ones that know how to do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% right. And one of the things.
Speech, sorry.
Well, I think you were getting into like how we communicate, right? Like how we and what we're communicating about and what's really important. When I went to college, I was definitely a know-it-all. Like I was real smart and I got grades. School was easy for me. And what that resulted in was a little bit or sometimes more of judgment on other people. So when I had teammates who just like could barely get their C's, I was like a little intolerant. But as I dove into who they are, their anxieties, how they grew up, what challenges they've faced their whole life. When you're in a team setting like that and you get to know people, it was very humbling and it made me step back a notch and say, you just don't know what people are going through or what kind of stuff they've dealt with in their life. And that's to your point that you got to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think that sometimes like I get some crap of like, oh, Amanda, you just like everybody. It's not that I just like everybody. It's just that I think people come to wherever they are in a different capacity to handle it. Right. So, you know, if you threw us all in the cooker, some of us would be able to like step up and just deal with it. Others would have an anxiety attack, depending on what we used to call it. I mean, you guys play baseball, right? Getting in the cooker. It's like you're up to bat, bottom of the ninth, loaded bases, game on the line sort of thing. Yeah. You just don't know. And you're like, oh, that person sucks. They can't handle the cooker. And it's like, well, they don't suck. They've got all these other things that are preventing them from really rising to that occasion. So it's just a matter of perspective, but being a part of a team is something that is really, I think, important to that human interaction that will last you a really long time. And I can say, even at like our CrossFit gym, I can tell who has played on a team and who played individual sports, because there's a completely different kind of mentality to the way they like operate. And it's not a bad or a good thing, because playing individual sports, I mean, you learn to just rely on your ability, and you can train alone. Like swimmers, I don't know how they put their head in the water for like an hour, 2 hours at a time and not talk to anyone. Like the whole reason I played softball was to be like, what the hell just happened, man? Why'd you drop that ball? Or, well, that was awesome. Great hit. You know, like I just want to talk the whole time and like shoot the shit and like celebrate tiny moments of, you know, like, oh, your backhand was shit and you just totally got that backhand. Like that was great, you know? But I think that team sports are really bring something else to the table for that sort of development about understanding and accepting other people. So I think that that's like, this is again to another point of like, it's not about baseball or softball. It's like also about just like that ability to build character. So.
That's awesome.
Amanda, I know we're short on time. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on. Could you tell everybody how they can follow you and just, you know, about your businesses and everything real quick, and we'll sign off?
Oh, sure. My Instagram is Amanda.
I actually know it.
Allen _9.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amanda Allen 9. Number 9. I was number 9. I was number 99 in high school and traveled ball, and that wasn't an option at UCLA, so I went with 19. It's a good number, right, Cass?
Yeah, exactly.
My law firm is trailslawgroup.com, as in like hiking trails. My husband and I love to hit the wilderness, and we used to spend a lot more time out there before we had a gym. So trailslawgroup.com is my real estate and business law firm. Outliercrossfit.com is our gym. It's our family, our friends, our sanity. So
yeah. Their Instagram is you guys have stepped it up since I gave Jer a little nudge.
Yeah, it's growing on him. It doesn't come naturally.
Yes,
but
it does. Yes, it does.
I really love following you guys, and you're growing. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations on that.
Appreciate
I
it.
think that like you said this at the beginning of the podcast, and it's a total cliche, but if you really do what you love, for me, it was playing the game, regardless of like whether I got to start every game. I loved every minute. And so if you're coaching and making an impact on kids' lives, like that's like more than most people could ask for getting out of any single day, let alone every day. So it's pretty awesome.
It's a lot of fun. We get to hang out, and it's fun right now too, because we have a lot of our kids reaching out and being like, I just miss like being able to show up and work at it, you know?
Well, I mean, now they like can really, really know how much they miss it. And Cass was making fun of me because I was like, that one kid, when he throws, he does that funny thing, and I was like watching all of you guys throw, and he's like, why are you watching that? I'm like, because I like seeing people throw baseballs. I don't know.
Hey, me too.
I love it. It's great. It's so great.
It's hard too, because after an undisclosed amount of time, I immediately become a fan of all of our kids, right? So
absolutely.
It doesn't matter if it's a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, or 10-year-old. I'm like, send me strikeout videos because they make me so happy.
My favorite drill is that K drill.
Thank you.
Just because you could see like a lot of the kids, like they're like, it's not just like chucking it. They have to like get into a position to start, and you can see their whole brain like, my body's going this way.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's fun to watch them like, well, why am I standing on one foot? And it's like, well, this isn't realistic. You're not.
Apparently, I can't stand on one foot. Who knew?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, guys, keep going.
Well, thanks again. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Yeah, we'll do this again. We'll get some more. Maybe we'll get your husband on here and Kat.
We should seriously. I'm dead serious, and talk more about the gym and what you guys have been doing there.
Yeah, you know, he was being like recruited for basketball, tore both ACLs in high school.
Oh,
bad luck.
Oh, wow, that's terrible. Anyway, guys, don't forget, go follow Amanda. Please rate, review, subscribe. Check out the online store. We've got hats, gear, weird shirts like that. Long Toss Legend, Strikeout Season, all of the great pitchers shirts, because pitchers need more loves. It's not all about dingers. So
Thank
All
you
right.
very much,
Thanks
Amanda.
again. I appreciate it.
Go Bruins. See you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, bye, guys.